on our smartphone, everywhere around us. Now you want to send message. How do you send your message for it to be purposeful, to hit the right target? We've got to be deliberate, we've got to be intentional. And that's why we're talking about strategic communication. There's nowhere else where that strategic communication is needed, much more than the battlefield or a situation where war is being fought, because crisis has a way of capturing imagination. Attention is momentarily turned to a period of crisis, to the zone of conflict. Yeah, once that information is purposefully and intentionally disseminated, and you are at the end of the day, you're probably not having enough response in terms of feedback or in terms of effects. Of course, remember that you have your own tool too, which is your own station, as the case could be. And beyond the radio too, there's nothing wrong in saying that, in advocating that the Nigerian Army can also have its own maybe television station. I'm sorry if you have it now, I'm not aware, or even your own newspaper house. You know, the purpose it will serve is simply that you are expanding the channels of reaching the people beyond just one channel, because you've got to tell your own story. And people may want to listen to you, but in listening to you, they may also want to disbelieve you. Do not forget again that we're in a system where there's a gap between the people and those and leaders. There's a trust deficit. So we have to go the extra mile to enhance trust, to engender trust, to build trust. And in trying to do that, we have to speak more. And in speaking more, we have to use channels that are available for us. Realizing that the ability to galvanize the people towards what you are doing as leaders, is very, very important. Is a very important step to achieving success. And next slide, please. Okay, on ex-militant testimonies, these are programs that are concerned that the radio station has been focusing on in the past. These are fine. It can be continued as case could be. Go on. Okay, family unification via radio. The role of radio is actually multi-leveled, multi-dimensional, in the sense that it fosters unity, brings about understanding, dissolves, the deep-seated narrative of the enemies, and enable you to chart courses, develop policies, show the directions that you're headed, and get the people integrated into your course of action. Okay, showcasing troop success, and most importantly, again, boosting morale. Remember my idea of the mind, how I try to remind us about the mind. And of course, in sharing this thought with an audience like this, I'm probably not telling you anything that you have not had before, but most definitely reiterating them, reminding us of them, and reinforcing the things that you have had, so that we can achieve absolute success, as the case could be. And again, we're saying that it could influence neutral audience when our messages are heard repeatedly. It could influence neutral audience that is probably still sitting on the fence, and there are many of them. However it goes, I don't care. People who are indifferent. But of course, when they listen, of course, people want to listen. The mind of the child, for instance, we often say is a mind that can be described as tabula rasa. But beyond the child also is the mind of the elders. People want to listen. People want to hear what is on offer. And we do know that we have different religious groups. I'm a Christian, for instance, and I do know in growing up, I've changed churches more than once. In changing church, it's not to say that the next church I'm going to they're going to showcase a different Bible to me. It's the same Bible that I'm going to go and encounter, that the pastor is going to use to preach to me. But sometimes some people change church only because you are fascinated by the preacher. You want to believe that, oh, this one is a very smart preacher. He has a way of talking. He convinces me easily. I'm fascinated by the word that is going to disseminate. And once more, we're saying that is how the mind works. Mind can be very potent. Okay, and of course, radio has a way of combating disinformation. The CGS mentioned it earlier. We're in an age of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Disinformation, malinformation. And the period of COVID-19, WHO added infodemic. It's going to continue. because the world is growing at the level of technology. Artificial intelligence is upon us. Augmented reality is upon us. The Internet of Things is upon us. Deep fakes are everywhere. It's not going to stop. How we're going to deal with it is what actually matters. And how do we deal with it? One major way of dealing with it is actually education. Not just the structural education, the one that we all went through, the Nigerian Defense Academy or elsewhere, but media literacy, continuous education. One that will update us on new developments and how to navigate them, especially when they are negative, trying to influence us in the wrong way. Okay, and some of these things are actually being done. We are very familiar with them. I'm not going to waste our time on them. Go on. Use of folklore and idioms. So what these slides are trying to tell us is that we need to be creative in our stations because people can actually be saturated. People can be bored with information. If we're not creative, we're not able to capture their imagination, they will consider us as boring and they will ignore us. And that's why you see we go to gatherings, people can just switch off and sleep off. It is natural if they're probably bored or if they're probably distracted by maybe one thing or the other. But again, if maybe the speaker or something else is around that is distracting, that is capturing their interest, seizing their interest, their imagination, in the manner in which the media can do, in the media of which the media, like the radio, like the Armed Forces Radio can do, of course, we can be sure that our message will be much more effective. Folklore is a major recommendation, an idea that can be pursued and sustained. Most importantly, calling shows. I'm very aware that this is being done as well. Move on. Feedback mechanism, all these are being done. And young people, of course, these are being done too. Music influences, of course, these are regular things that we do. Move on. Yeah, this is actually in practice. I'm aware of that, but again, it's what's reminding us of SMS alert tied to broadcast. Yes, this has been done. Go on. Customized content, gender, yeah. Again, this speaks to strategic communication as well. We have gone beyond the age of, globalized communication, where I think that this is a hall of people, an audience listening to me. But I also know that in this audience, there are different levels of people. We're divided according to age, according to income group. We're divided again according to origin, according to gender, etc., etc. So how do we segment our audience? How do we put them into categories so that we can tailor our message to get to them appropriately? Then at the end of the day, we can say our message is effective. Go on. Okay. Real-time fact correction. Of course, this is something that we're familiar with. Information is wrongly thrown out there. How do you quickly correct it? And this is very important so that people will not go with the wrong information. Go on. Avoid glamorizing violence. We see this every day, how people glamorize violence, right? And even in international media, some of us prefer one media to the other, because you do not want to see grisly pictures, pictures of people dying and all of that. Can be very disturbing. And some of these things affect public conscience, but we shouldn't be party to it. And that's the point we're making here. Respect of the dignity of the human being. A listener post can be very important as a way of getting feedback. A perception surveys, audience mapping. Again, speaks to categorization of audience. Know your audience before you disseminate information. Don't just disseminate blindly. The Armed Forces Radio know who their audience is, and of course, they are working at it, but at what level of consistency? Are they consistent enough? The point we're making here is that there are ways in which we can recreate the narrative, up the ante, increase our chances of success, and not just success, but absolute success. Go on. Okay, these are centers, flashpoints of the crisis. Go on. Some other sections in the audience: elders, traders, youth leaders, and testimonials and appeals. What meaning are we making of this? We have organizations that like to get people who are successful on account of being part of their organizations, testifying to the success. This is just to enhance belief, engender confidence in what they are doing, and get more people to patronize them. Okay. Sometimes you may want to see it as and a kind of endorsement. People who are patronized, who have given my service to before, are turning around to endorse what I have given. Move on. Okay, we know what happens on Friday. We'll go to mosque. On Sunday, we'll go to church. Again, we're talking about categorization. How well are we segmenting the time that will release certain information? You do not want to send the wrong message at the wrong time. Be mindful of this. It shouldn't just be haphazard. The use of respected voices. There's a sense in saying again that what somebody that is respected in the system can tell me is different from what somebody that is less respected. And who are these respected people? Maybe political leaders, not all of them anyway, maybe some of them that are very, very credible, maybe military leaders, maybe business leaders, religious leaders, traditional leaders, as the case could be. Get them to endorse your content and, of course, leverage it. Media literacy is also very important. I've talked about this earlier, beyond structural education. Peace building content creation, of course, this is being done commendably. So please keep it up. Go on. Cultural advisors, embedded anthropologists. Again, this talks to the idea of feculene human terrain, something that we are very familiar with. And it is a variant of it that we often call all of society. How do you describe it now? All of society approach. Okay. What's the idea of feculene human terrain theory is simply telling us that we can be anthropological, we can be cultural about warfare. It is not just about brute force, but about understanding the environment that the battle is going to take place. Sometimes if you work on the minds of the people, the mind again is featuring here. If you work on the environment, understand their culture, their patterns, their particularities, work on them, get their buy-in, and they might even help you fight the insurgents or the terrorists or the bad ones operating in their midst, much more than you can imagine, much more than might, than brute force can probably do. Okay, then deploy post-conflict measures, preempt false narratives. That's what the radio should be doing, and much more than that, in addition to other social media platforms that we may want to harness. Go on, as I move to conclude now. Yes, we're familiar with this. I do not want to be preaching to the choir. You are part of it. You initiated it. The cross-platform campaigns, radio plus social plus town hall, and multimedia approach. We cannot be limited to one channel in the days that we are in because of the multiplicity of communication channels and the fact that it is upon us, the fact that it is still growing, and the fact that it will continue to grow. Okay, there's a sense in saying that we can converge them, we can mix them to reach as many audience as possible. Much as the radio is powerful, let's not forget, let's not ignore other channels. They have their own audiences as well. Okay, go on their quarterly assessment metrics. Let's measure how far we're doing. Maybe that's what we're doing now, 10 years after. How have we performed? What more can we do to improve our performance? Go on, align with operations planning. Yes. This is just telling us that those who are in charge of the station or those who are manning the information outlets should be familiar with the operations of the military so that by the time disinformation or misinformation is in the air, they can quickly correct it. And the audience and the people who are ordinarily very interested, who are usually very interested in conflict situations, will be attracted to it, or rather their minds can be appropriately shaped and not taken over, by the enemies. Enhanced morale boosting is priceless. Once more, and I'm not going to preach to the choir, we know what this means. We know how important it can be. Alienating communities, yeah, this can be mitigated, with our own information. Move on. Embedded into operational planning, I made this point earlier, briefing plus radio operations alignment, yes, be informed or inform the journalists, the reporters, the publishers, or on their personalities, presenters, let them be in the know. If they're in the know, they can be like Ohamo, they can be the third party portraying your side of the story, even where you are least interested or where you are not expecting them to so do. So further steps, ladies and gentlemen, respected one or that. We're saying that it is important to support the expansion of Army radio. But how do we do this? At 10 years after, we can say that it has not done badly. Okay, but and 10 years after, we can also say that all the basics, all the textbook ideas of how a radio station should function, that the radio station is complying with it. But what kind of compliance are we getting? Is it one that is episodic, knee-jerk, or is it one that is consistent? I can arguably make the case that there's hardly any kind of consistency in any media stations in this media station or media organization in this country. So what we need therefore is a higher level of consistency, a higher level of focus. The ideas are there, we'll have the understanding, we'll have the manpower, and we have mapped out the work plan very well. But what about implementation? We can up the ante at the level of implementation, at the level of execution, up the ante at the level of consistency. Okay, with consistency on a long scale, not just on a one-off scale. Okay, we can be sure of success at the end of the day. And that's what I'm going to be leaving us with as we are moving forward into another decade. Let's be much more consistent, okay, in the execution of the excellent timelines, of the excellent ideas that we have imagined in the theorization of the idea of the Armed Forces Radio as a case could be. On this note, Chief of Defense Staff, sir, Honorable Minister, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stop and I will say that I won't mind a round of applause, if you don't mind.
You are home to GTV Africa, live from Abuja.
Shall we please give another
Armed
round
Forces
of
Radio
applause to the guest
celebrating
lecturer
our
for
10
the
years
decisive
anniversary.
presentation. We are now in the second segment of the lecture, which is the interactive section. Permit me to invite the guest lecturer, 3 discussants, and the moderator to the stage to do justice to the subject matter. May I most respectfully invite Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, the guest lecturer, to the stage. May I also invite Major General Chris Olukolade, retired, former Director of Defense Information, as a discussant. Also to be invited as discussant is Dr. Mohammed Kudu Abubakar, FNIPR, FSPSP. He is a media consultant to the National Institute for Legislation and Democratic Studies. He is a popular figure on the TV screen prior to his retirement 35 years ago. Another approximate discussant is Mrs. Millicent Nwaka of Channel Television. May I, at this point, invite the moderator, Brigadier General S.K. Usman, retired, former Director, Army Public Relations, to drive the process. The Brigadier General, sir.
better. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I think Professor Abiodun's lecture was so succinct and very straightforward. There is no need to reiterate what he has said. And we have 30 minutes for these interactive sessions, and we have 3 discussants. And what I intend doing, actually, with the kind permission of the special guest of honor, the Chief of Defense Staff, is to give each one of them 5 minutes each. Then we will have 15 minutes for the floor and the sum up, and possibly gray areas where the guest speaker would like to shed more light. So without wasting more time, and they are talking about he for she and being gender sensitive. I'm even elevating it a little bit further to be gender submissive. So I'm going to invite the first discussant, Millicent Mwaga, please, to hit the ground running. You have 5 minutes, and it's 5 minutes start now.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. It's also very interesting. I'm usually the one asking questions, but I'm thinking this is a conspiracy of some sort. Here I am making an input. First, I'd like to congratulate the Armed Forces of Nigeria Radio Service. 10 years is really a milestone. I'm also grateful to be here with one of my mentors, and I didn't know he would be the keynote speaker until the very last minute, talking about Professor Adeniyi. And I'd like to begin from where he started, about the power of the mind. As a lawyer with my law background, it reminded me of what some of my lecturers at the law school, Buhari, said, that even the devil knoweth not the mind of man, man's intention. So in the court, for example, judges will interpret an intention to kill by the severity of the blow of some sort. And that's how, we find out the intention of man. So when it comes to, the mind, and when it comes to counterinsurgency, what we have today, the minds of people, are really what members of the armed forces have given them. So the state of the mind of man, essentially, is what the armed forces has fed the people with, and this is very important. We see this in perhaps some of the work of the armed forces radio service. We see this with the traditional media. We see this with the new media. And I think, in my experience of working on stories from the armed forces, one challenge has been silence. There's an issue. We've gotten something happening in one part of the country. We need somebody to respond. And this is not something recent, perhaps far back. Let's take this to, say, 2016, thereabout. We've had silence. The speed of response has enabled a gap. And in such gap, misinformation, disinformation, is the order of the day. Perhaps today, what we see is information being sent out, maybe from the Ministry of Defense, but the information sometimes is a lot. You might have 3 pages, and the editor is supposed to choose what to put. So for television, maybe you have 27 words. So when you have 3 pages from the ministry, and there's 27 words you have to put in broadcast, because there are others too, that you need to broadcast their news, where do you start from? So you have presenters who have to pick and choose what they feel, to go on air with. So sometimes as well, that narrative coming from the ministries, coming from the spokesperson, is very important. And knowing the different broadcast means, like that of radio, that of television, is also important to sort of help in the fight against insurgency in the country. I think I'll leave it here and allow the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the wonderful. Don't worry, I'm using this one. This one is okay. And of course, I was just looking at the delicate balancing. We're talking about the broadcast itself and the response of the armed forces, and of course, the communication management STs. Now, having had her, we are also going to the other veteran, broadcaster, Dr. Muhammad Kuda Abubakar, even though you just failed one test, of being Damasani, that you don't even know Jana MT Usman. So, Damasani, you have heard Millicent, of course, you have heard the guest speaker. Within 5 minutes, I believe you have something to add value to this very interesting conversation.
Certainly. Honorable Minister, here represented by the Permanent Secretary, the Chief of Defense Staff, representatives of the service teams, senior military officers serving and retired, my co-panelists, of course, the keynote speaker, who happens to be my colleague on the field. We were the pioneer National Assembly correspondents as far back as 1999, when at some point, he left us. We didn't know that he was going for greener pastures. He only came back and here he was with his PhD. So we say congratulations. Now he's a professor. He has indeed shown us what he is made of as a professor of mass communication. The moderator made some allusions because we are talking about communication, feedback, and very, very critical word here is the ethical nature of communication. So if we make some allusion, I think it's important for me to clear them. He's a Katsina, he's from Katsina. And we Nupes, we were their overlords. During the Usman Danfodio War, up to today, the Golden Gate, I know, the Golden Gate of Katsina Emirate is still in Nupeland because you know what it means. The professor told us broadcast success is battle success. Win the narrative, win the war. We won the war at that time. So up to now, they still are in that delusion. Having said that, there are just few key points I want to, if you like, elucidate. Like I said, the professor has said it all. But these key points are important. One, information dissemination. Two, influencing public opinion. Three, building trust. And again, that word, strategic communication. Broadcasting helps disseminate accurate and timely information to the public, dispelling rumors and misinformation that can exacerbate security challenges. And I think within the last 10 years, the Professor Adeni has shown us that the Armed Forces Radio has done just that, and it is poised to do more. I think we should give them a big round of applause. Effective broadcasting, again, he has shown us by his theory of the mind, can influence opinion, and indeed it has. It shapes public opinion, it galvanizes national support and enhances accountability, ultimately contributing to collective security. What I may argue is whether that collective security is being achieved. I think we need to do more, use broadcasting very well. The professor talked about having different layers and multi-channels, expanding the radio station. And I will also add that thinking about the personnel who do the work. In some study we have carried out in the course of my PhD thesis, we realized that at the ladder or the lowest of the rung in the broadcasting platform or chain is the personnel themselves. Nobody, even the media owners, kind of neglect their welfare. They are the least paid, the least remunerated, and the least talked about when it comes to recognition. Thirdly, the issue of strategic communication. Broadcasting enables the military to communicate its missions and actions to the public, ensuring transparency and promoting a positive narrative. I think without discountenancing what Millicent said about the armed forces being silent when there is the need for them to respond very quickly, I will say the Armed Forces Radio over the years has been a platform that you get to hear immediately the responses and the necessity of further information. So what do we say now could be the challenges and opportunities for the Armed Forces Radio? The issue of fake news and misinformation is there. Professor Adini has also already talked about the need for more collaboration and partnerships. I would say the Armed Forces Radio should do just that. Already the Armed Forces has what it calls the military-civil relationship, so it is important that department or that directorate to be strengthened so that it can also strengthen the armed forces. And there should be capacity building, more training for the media personnel on conflict reporting and security issues can be improved so that the quality of broadcasting and counter-insurgency can also be strengthened and improved. I will leave it here for now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that wonderful elucidation. So you have heard it. And of course, even the guest speaker had made reference to some of your previous efforts and work, both as Director of Army Public Relations and Director of Defense Information. But I think with benefit hindsight, we found that in those days of ECOMOC, you know the importance of broadcast, and thankfully, you are, I think, the pioneering, or rather, brain behind this institution we are celebrating its 10th anniversary. But unfortunately, you don't have the luxury of time. You have just 5 minutes to enrich the conversation in that context.
All right. The guest of honor, person of the Honorable Minister of Defense, represented, Chief of Defense Staff, senior officers, serving and retired, distinguished gentlemen. I want to thank the moderator for first of all saving me the need to review the paper, and by making it clear that that paper in itself is self-explanatory. And having listened to Professor Adeni, enough must have been gathered in terms of the topic of the contribution of broadcasting to counterinsurgency operations. So all that we have to do now is to just see which dimensions we should add to the paper. I will be coming from the angle of just about 2 or 3 points to add. I pray I can do that within the time I have. Well, one of the things he referred to was the issue of morale. And these are things that created the gap that the Armed Forces Radio of Nigeria that's the basis for the existence of the Armed Forces Radio. If we look back at the idea that prompted the need for this radio to come to be, you know that when we are going on any operation, particularly foreign operations, when the ECOMOG operation was on, the only way we address the concerns of families at home would always be that there's one man, I think Mr. Ben Asange, is that Asante? Yes. Ben Asante will always follow the, you know, occasionally he will go to Liberia, Sierra Leone, record, you know, voices of soldiers and come back and play on one or two stations. That was one way of trying to meet the concerns of families back at home through the use of broadcast. But definitely it still left some gap. Even while there, the troops too needed to interact and be sure what's happening at home. So organizations such as the Voice of Nigeria come in handy as the major source of news about home. All of these are very crucial to the morale of troops. And I also remember that the peak of January 6th invasion of Freetown, with the confusion in town after the rebels invaded the town, the city. Everybody wanted to know what was going on. And the major source of reaching both the Nigerian audience of what's happening to ECOMOG and what's even happening locally on ground, the major one was BBC. And occasionally we have just opportunity of airtime through BBC when it is a focus on Africa. Everyone wants to tune in and know what's going on about this mission. Another thing was that there was the local radio station, the only one working there, Radio Democracy. They can only give us a few minutes on air to address the public. All of these were demonstration of the crucial need of broadcasting to the welfare of troops and even the operation that they are engaged in. So with the arrival of the Armed Forces Radio of Nigeria, we see that additional effort is being made to close that gap. And I think that from observation, following the activities of the station, we can testify that they are not doing badly and they are coping with this need, which is the basis for the creation of the station. At the inception, also with the privilege of being there at the beginning, one of our concerns was how to cope with the demands of regulatory authorities. Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, for instance, will need to know whether, because there's this assumption that since they are military, they will not be compliant. They will not want to, you know, be obedient to broadcast codes or, you know, the regulations that are required for establishing a radio station. And that was one major challenge that we had to face. But I think we were able to scale it. And there's every indication that I don't think that the station at the moment has been found guilty of breaching any of the broadcast codes. I believe that with the nod I'm getting from Madam from NBC, I think that's another basis to congratulate this station for meeting the bills of regulatory authorities. And not just that, it gives us, you know, some leverage to appreciate the need for regulation in a democracy. At the peak of the insurgency, we noticed our attempt to get attention, to get the cooperation, so to say, of the NBC to counter some misinformation that we feel was not good for the military. There was an instance in Bauchi where the disposal of the body of some troops was being aired as they were being, you know, they were being wheeled into the theater, and all that was, there was not a good scene at all. and it was put on TV, we felt that we could get the input of NBC to sanction the concerned television station. We protested. At the end of the day, I don't think we got the kind of support we needed to sanction such tendencies against the military. But I think that there's been some development now that will not allow such tendencies to get away. That notwithstanding, is not to say that even when we came on board, when the radio came on board, the agency has been up and doing at least to encourage us to be, and there has been a lot of compliance here. There's also the need for training, which was at the beginning the concern. The intention was to ensure that the station was 100% manned by military personnel. And so there was need for training, which was conducted by the Freedom Radio in Kano. With the input of Freedom Radio, we had to also relate with other organizations that have been, friends all along. And so, Radio Nigeria, Voice of Nigeria, had to be in collaboration with the station. I think that collaboration is still ongoing, and we've seen a lot of impact of it in terms of training and rubbing off on the professional capacity of not just the military to participate in broadcast, but also to influence the importance of radio in I stop. But just to add a voice to it, to commend the station for meeting. Want to also agree with, or yes, agree with what the CDS is opinion. This station will be improved, and I believe that all the input of the DHU all this while will continue to pay off. So a lot to congratulate, we include both the station and the defense headquarters. So I add that at this moment. And if you don't mind, please join me to applaud this station and the DHQ for the success so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, the job of moderator sometimes could be very tasking and tedious, especially when one of the discussants is his boss. Just like I've had with General Olukolade, time was ticking, and I was just trying to rack my brain to see how best I can stop it. But of course, every word he uttered makes a lot of sense in this regard. So thank you very much for that wonderful input. And I think there are so many other issues that we have to think of in respect of the guest lecturer. We are talking about funding and further collaboration, because I know no media operates on charity. All those that did, they have gone to the mortuary. So this is very important, and of course, talk about this collaboration, the relationship with the FM radio station in Maiduguri, Lafayette and all the rest. We're thinking of networking, and of course, it's about time we should go beyond radio broadcasting to think of television also and all the rest of the thing. Having heard from the discussants, and I'm so sure the audience also would like to add value to the discussions. And unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of time, and we're going to entertain only 3 questions, and thereafter we come to the second row and the front row before inviting the special guest of honor to sum it up, and we'll be done with this introduction session. So do I see hands
Jota?
up in case you have a question,
Babu?
comment, we'll beckon on you. You mention your name and go ahead. Say, well, yes, I've seen 1, I've seen 2, Well, Mr. Can you put your hand down because you are part of the second row? Any other one? Okay. I will give you number. Generally, you are one, and of course, you are two. Otherwise, we will take advantage of who? Oh, okay. Generally, I always like to be gender sensitive. I gave you one, but I will give the number to the lady first, then you are second, and he will be the third one. So the lady, can you please give her the microphone? Thank you.
You need more money. Yeah? Wait.
My
Just
name
stick to the phone number to the front.
is Africa. I do program inside Eastern Australia. I want to use this opportunity. Make I thank the military, especially for the establishment of this radio station. Because somebody like me, somebody like me, before now, I think say the military are not accessible by us, the civilians. Not until when I entered here with them for almost 5 years now, doing my program with them on the Armed Forces Radio. I want to thank God for this day, and I say congratulations to the radio station and the Armed Forces. My major concern now the welfare of this our military men. When they out there, they fight for us. Yes, but we are looking at the purpose our gas when they here and the ones when they there. I know say you reach out to them, make them look into the welfare of our military men, especially the younger ones. It's very important. And secondly, I also somebody don't talk make we branch out. I hear say this radio station they reach out, supposed to reach out to the 36 states. Sometimes, and that's what I hear, but I don't know whether that's true. But it's very important because with this radio station reach out to 36 states, it will inform Nigerians, especially the civilians, give us the opportunity, the civilians to come and inform the military, waiting that they see what they happen among the military, where some of you will know if you talk about. Thank you very much for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much.
The representative of the Minister of Defense, Ambassador Sir, the Chief of Defense Staff Sir, senior officers, invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. So I don't want to label and also follow the pari pursuit of all the accolades to the Armed Forces Radio. I congratulate them for at least a decade of their celebration of excellence. But I want to also bring to our notice that it is not easy to run a radio successfully. Based on the experiences we had in Sierra Leone with Armed Forces Radio, I was privileged to be a military spokesman of the mission there, and I knew how difficult it is to run a radio station. We are lucky to have the Chief of Defense Staff that is not shy from talking. Previously, we had some Chief of Defense Staffs that they don't talk, but they want to result. They allow only the spokesman to be talking. But in this case, we are lucky, at least this one is talking from time to time. And also there are no conflicts in terms of deliverance from the services. I observed that he is one doing the talking. And I will congratulate them for agreeing and understanding the rudiments and dynamics of dissemination of information. Every time we talk about we have defeated the terrorists, we neutralizes them, we catches of arms, 2 rifles, 30 rounds of that one. People are getting tired of such reporting. That kind of reporting, we must have partnership with credible people from different places of our operational positions. For instance, the collaboration with at least radio stations in operational areas, Maiduguri, Katsina, Sokoto, Zamfara, and so on and so forth. Benue, all of those places, and at least to make sure that we have a collaboration with respected people there that are not part of the armed forces. Every time we cannot keep on pressing ourselves. Whatever we say, no matter how truthful it is, people get tired of it. More especially with political, in this kind of political era, people must have their mind, whether positively or negatively. Whatever you do, they must politicize it. We need training. We have to train our personnel. Media is expensive. The prof and the members of the high table, they know this. You must spend a lot to have a credible media outfit. So I'm appealing to the Chief of Defense Staff, sir, please, for you to have a very good media outfit, as you are putting all your efforts in this crisis situation, you must spend money. You have to train the personnel. You have to give them confidence, just like the way I've been seeing you in places where the crisis areas are. You are operating there. You must train your personnel and give them equipment. Coverage area, again, the Armed Forces Radio, I don't think they cover more than 100 or so kilometers. They have to expand it, or you will be forced to go into collaboration with other stations in crisis areas. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Brigadier General M.M. Rima, retired. The gentleman on the second row, please.
Your Excellencies, the Honorable Minister of Defense, ably represented by the PEMSEC, the CDS, CG Musa, Chief Hosts, other senior military officers present. I want to quickly stand on the existing protocol. I'm here representing my Director General, Voice of Nigeria, Malam Jibrin Babandache. He's supposed to be here, but for very urgent and very essential, not that this is not essential, he had prepared and was ready to be here when he was called for the assignment. My name is Godwin Oka, Deputy Director News. Now, I want to really thank God for the Armed Forces Radio, because we've been there, we've been part of, Voice of Nigeria has been part of it for all these years. And we've always been around, and even we still have our staffs who are still there working with Armed Forces Radio. Now, what I want us to know, even as journalists, as media house or media operators, there are two lines of my concern. Most times when the issue of military operations and then the civic responsibility of us as journalists. Now, you want the military to come out to speak on their operations. Now, one thing you must know again is that you are talking to, in this world of social media, you're exposing strategies to those who are you're fighting. So I want to use this opportunity for us to take this as a point of reaching out to all media houses. Sometimes, if the silence of the military should be allowed to do their job. Why do I say so? Each time you expect them to come out to tell you strategies, this, they want to do that, they're exposing their strategies to the enemy. So there must be this sense of civic responsibility. In other clients, when they are going for operation, they don't even discuss it. They don't tell anyone, they don't let you know until when they must have succeeded of their actions. But these same international organizations want us to always expose our strategies, and then we are being called names. So I'm using this opportunity. Yes, we as journalists, we want news, we want to hear the stories, but we must have this sense of responsibility to know that issues of security in our country is key, no matter how urgent it might be. I want to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Even if you did not stop, I was about stopping you anyway. So thank you very much. And in fact, I don't know how you dodge this, because Jibrin Baba in that is supposed to be one of the discussants, and that is why we have to remove the chair. So we are going to penalize you because you fell and you end up taking advantage of that. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, anyway, we have exhausted it. I prepare a situation where people who have been listening, following this station like I do, will look at issues that emanate from the broadcast or the work of the station, and of course, Professor Adeni's paper. Having done that, in the absence of any other person on the second row, I'm coming gradually to the front row. And like I said, the special guest of honor will sum it up. But before then, if there is any interjection from the front row, the representatives of the service chiefs, before I invite the guest speaker to respond, or do I start calling them? The way you are looking at me, General, so I'm feeling intimidated. Anyway, let me, I'll just give you 1 minute. Oh, nothing. All right. Representative of the service chiefs, nothing. Let me, Coca, right? Yeah? Okay, please. Or NBC, okay. Regulatory people. No, I don't. Come, where is the macro?
The Minister of Defense, ably represented, Chief of Defense Staff, and the dignitaries here. Thank you very much. I'm here representing the DG NBC. The presentation that we had today is very apt, actually. And the last speaker over there talked about expansion. NBC actually expects this message to go around the entire country, especially where you have flashpoints. Armed Forces of Nigerian Radio Service has done very, very well. And unfortunately, the DG was supposed to be here today. This morning, up until the time I got here, he wanted to come here, but of course, something made him not to be here. He actually sent me his speech, which I'm sure everybody would have loved to hear, because it aligns with today's presentation and all the discussions they've made today. And one of those is collaboration. The gentleman they talked about that they'll be forced to collaborate. Yes, you should collaborate. We have FRC and we have NTA that has more penetration than Armed Forces Radio. Please collaborate. Everybody in Nigeria needs to hear what is happening here. And I want to tell you that you've done incredibly well so far. You have. I'm saying that as the regulator because that's what the DG said I should convey. You've done incredibly well, but of course, you can always do better. So he also says that we should think of replicating this in Flashpoint, other states, that we MPC will be of help. MPC will assist all the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that kind of heartwarming vote of confidence on Armed Forces Radio Services. And I think even though it's not part of moderating schedule, with the kind permission of the special guest of honor, hearing this encouraging words from MBC, I will crave your indulgence to please put your hands together for the Armed Forces Radio. Thank you very much. So Timothy, you are doing well, but of course you can do better. Now, having heard from the audience, and I'm so sure the professor is itching to address one or two issues that I've said, and so I'll yield the microphone to you so that you speak to them before we invite the special guest of honor to sum up the session.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, ably represented, distinguished Chief of Defense Staff. I'm exalted and esteemed ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure again. I think I can't see any divergence really between the points we're all making here. We're concerned about enhancing productivity and efficiency of the Armed Forces Radio. And one point that has recently been emphasized is the need for the organization to have branches across sections of the country so they can reach as many people as possible, considering how dignifying, how noble the ideas they are disseminating is. We're a country that requires more work, a country where development is still something that we consider outstanding if you want to look at it in terms of figurative terms. And one key area that remains our focus is unity, common belief, synergy of purpose. We have divergences in terms of our collective mission, our collective idea of what a nation should be like, and how do we foster integration, if not through ideas, through constant dissemination of information that will enhance our collectivity, as the case could be. And the place of the radio cannot be overemphasized in this sphere, as we have demonstrated here, looking at the role it has played in history and the role that it will continue to play, especially as technology is especially evolving. But something also occurred to me in general, sir, and it is the power of word. Beyond the power of the mind, it is the power of word which we sometimes take for granted. God forbid, each time I hear about violence, death in any section of the country, my mind goes to how the president will respond. And next, my mind goes to, what the role of the service chiefs will be. Oftentimes we hear that, we have President Tinubu or the president has summoned service chiefs, and here they are, they'll be there again, and here they are where they're probably done the best they can do, and probably still doing. But we still have this thing rearing its head. So how do you explain it in that situation to the populace that is already in disbelief, not trusting leaders, finding it difficult to believe that government is actually present? That's where the power of words comes in. The words that we utter in those circumstances, the message that we are disseminating, how appropriate are the words that we use? Sometimes it's advisable to speak less, but not to speak at all. No, I mean, to speak less, and that's far better than not speaking at all. But the less that we are dropping out there, how qualitative is it in terms of the creativity of the work that we are deploying and the power of those words, to mirror into the hearts and minds of the Nigerian people. These things are very, very important. The large section of the people actually know that we are all in difficulty, that even the commanders on the field are in difficulty, that even the military chiefs, the president is in difficulty, that the problem is probably intractable, right? But they may live in denial if the message is not appropriate, if the words that are being delivered are not appropriate. And that's why we have to be concerned about these words. And these words are not far to fetch, ladies and gentlemen. It's about our imagination. And we all have it. I'm very confident because we have an elite military, well-trained military corps out there. They've got the words. But do they use it at the appropriate times? And very well too. And of course, the avenue to disseminate is also is available in the radio station that belongs to the army. Okay, going forward, um, overall, I want to believe that these lessons are things that we can imbibe, further to our collective zeal, to enhance the productivity of not just the Armed Forces Radio, but the Nigerian nation, as the case could be. Thank you very much, moderator.
Thank you very much. So in other words, you are suggesting apart from non-violent communication, we should not be communicating violently, right? So, it's understandable. So with that, we are gradually coming to this aspect of the program, which is the interactive session, having heard from the discussants and of course from the floor and the response from the guest speaker. May I have the honor and privilege to invite the special guest of honor here, ably represented by His Excellency Ambassador Gabriel Tanima Abuja, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Defense, to please sum up the session. The guest of honor, sir.
Thank you so very much for the opportunity. Let me start by thanking the guest lecturer for a job very well done. He was very succinct in his presentation and was able to take us through the very nitty-gritty of broadcasting and especially radio broadcasting. And of course, I want to thank all the panelists and the moderator for taking us through the paper and of course, looking at the various angles of not only broadcasting or radio broadcasting, but also the need and how we need to push this forward. Now, I want to just round off by looking at a few issues that have touched, and I want to just reiterate that broadcasting, in this case, especially the Armed Forces Radio, is not just about passing information. It is way, way, way beyond that. It is about shaping the narrative. What do we want the people to hear? It is not enough to just say this happened and then we'll pass it on to the people. But we have to be in control of what we want them to hear and how it is said out there. Why? Because enemy is a huge weapon of war. The enemy will say whatever they want to say. They will put out pictures there like we often see. They use the social media so well. So we have to have a way of countering up these issues that they put. Very strong way to do that is the Armed Forces Radio, which is a very strong strategy in non-kinetic warfare. Very strong strategy. So we must be able to see that as what it is. So running the Armed Forces Radio is not just another entertainment channel, but it is a channel that is supposed to shape the way Nigerians think and to see the way the insurgency and then, of course, the various problems surrounding it is being handled by the Nigerian government through the Nigerian military. And at every point in time, we must be seen to be on top of our game. It is very, very important. And having said that, I think informing the citizens is a very, very strong from the Armed Forces Radio. But like I said, we must be careful how we inform what they hear. Then another very important issue that we can get from the radio is boosting the troops' morale. Remember that we have different theaters of war at this point, different theaters. So it is often encouraging when others hear the progress being made in one other theater. If I hear that my colleagues in theater A are doing better, it's a morale booster for us in theater B, C, and D. So we must be able to deliberately shape those messages to reach out to them and be able to pass this message that will require them to see. And lastly, it is very important that we try to expand the reach. A lot of people have alluded to that, but we must seek support from government to expand the reach across not only affected states, but even states that are not affected. Because whether you like it or not, as long as you're a Nigerian, hearing the news of what is happening in one part of the country has the way of affecting you. Sometimes it even affects whether you want to travel to that part of the country or you want to go around there or even have something to do with their people or not. It is a psychological warfare that we must deliberately engage in and try to deal with. So it is important that we expand the reach. And lastly, the Armed Forces Radio is a very, very strong force in peace building, de-radicalization, reintegration. This is very, very important. So we must be able to also bring out these success stories with de-radicalization, reintegrating these people into the society. And when we say the reintegration, please let's not limit it only to the insurgents or repentant insurgents, but we also have to reintegrate the victims. But we must be seen to be advancing these various courses that government is taking, these various efforts. And it is only on the basis of that that we can achieve greater peace building for a safer Nigeria. I thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful summer. The special guest of honor is Chief of distinguished ladies and gentlemen. With this, we formally come to the end of this interactive session. Thank you and God bless you all.
You may please retire to your seats. Thank you, sir. May I use this opportunity to invite the photographers
No, sir, later.
definitely.
We'll do it later, sir.
Immediately after the group photograph, at this point, may I most respectfully request the guest lecturer and the four discussants to be on standby while we make a token presentation today. First on the list is Professor.
Traditional dance, NYC. 5 minutes.
Next in the order of the program is I sincerely apologize for the mix-up. Next in the order of the program is goodwill messages. But because of want of time, we are proceeding to the dramatic dance band. May I invite the National Youth Service Corps National Drama Troupe for the dramatic dance display. Permit me to assert that dramatic dance is a demonstrative form that integrates dance and dramatic narrative, creating rhythmic movement of the body that expresses emotions, stories, and cultural themes through movement and expression. At this point, you have the floor.
Oh,
Thank you very much for that wonderful performance. The next event in the order of the program is presentation of souvenirs and awards. May I most respectfully request the Chief of Defense Staff, General C.G. Musa OFRO, to make a presentation to the Honorable Minister of Defense, who equally doubles as a special guest of honor, ably represented by the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Defense, His Excellency Ambassador Gabriel Tamino Aduda.
Hello, hello.
Thank you, sir. So may I beseech the Chief of Defense Staff to remain while the Executive Director, Armed Forces of Nigeria Radio Service, Colonel T.O. Antiga, makes a token presentation to the Chief of Defense Staff. The Chief of Defense Staff may please remain to make further presentation to the services. Having said that, I most respectfully invite the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General O.O. Oluyede, ably represented by Major General N.E. Oluyede. May I humbly invite the Chief of the Naval Staff, Vice Admiral E.I. Ogala, Admiralty Medal for his souvenir. May I please urge Commodore R.D. Oderemi to receive the souvenir on behalf of the Chief of the Naval Staff. Next is the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal H.B. Abubakar, for his souvenir, ably represented by Air Vice Marshal I.O. Daranola, Chief of Civil Military Relations, Headquarters, Nigerian Air Force. Thank you, sir. The Chief of Defense Staff may please retire to his seat. The presentation of souvenirs continues. Permit me to invite the Director General, Chief Executive Officer, National Orientation Agency, Malam Larry Issa Ondeli. To make this presentation, may I humbly invite the representative of the Chief of Defense Intelligence, Mr. A.K. Marcus, Director, Psychological Operations, DIA, to make the token presentation. Thank you, sir. May I humbly request the representative of the Chief of Defense Intelligence to make further presentation to the Director General, National Broadcasting Commission, Mr. Charles Ebubu, ably represented by the Commission Secretary, Mrs. Gloria Makinde. Thank you, sir. You may retire to your seat, sir. The next recipient is the Director General, Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, Mr. Saliu Abdulhamid Dembus, ably represented by the Director, News, Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, Mrs. Usina Banchika. With utmost humility, may I invite the representative of the Chief of Army Staff, Major General N.A. Onoja, to make a token presentation. Next beneficiary. The next beneficiary is the Managing Director, News Agency of Nigeria, Mr. Ali Mohammed Ali, ably represented by the Director, Research and Statistics, News Agency of Nigeria, Mr. Kayode Olata. To make this presentation, I will humbly invite the representative of the Chief of Army Staff to make the token presentation. Also on our list is the Controller General, Nigeria Customs Service, Controller General B.A. Adeni, ably represented. To make the token presentation, may I have the singular honor to invite the Chief of Defense Staff, General C.J. Busa, OFR, to make the token presentation. Okay. Thank you, sir. Next presentation is for the guest lecturer and the three discussants. May I have the singular honor and privilege to invite the guest lecturer, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, in no particular consideration. To make this presentation, may I humbly request the Chief of Defense Staff, General C.J. Busa, to make the presentation. Thank you, sir. May I beseech the Chief of Defense Staff to remain and make further presentation to Major General Chris Olukolade, retired. Next is Dr. Mohammed Kudu Abubakar. The next beneficiary is Mrs. Millicent Walker of the Channel Television. And the moderator, Brigadier General S.K. Husband, retired. May I humbly request the Chief of Defense Staff to return to his seat. Thank you, sir. The special guest of honor, sir. The next segment of presentation of award is to personnel and members of staff who have spent long tour of duty in the Armed Forces of Nigeria Radio Service since inception in 2015. A total of 4 personnel and 6 civilian staff met the criteria. The names are Lieutenant S.O. Oladimeji, Sergeant G.R.D., Corporal Kulayo I, Corporal Elesami I, Corporal. For the civilian staff, we have Mrs. Shinyere Shuwumba, Secondary Staff of the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, Daniel Obi, Ms. Telma Okonkon, Ms. Joy Agbakwe, Mr. Jeff Chile, and Mrs. Favor Chiamaka Ebuta. Because of want of time, I will invite a personnel and a civilian staff for a symbolic presentation. Others will collect the awards from the Executive Director, Armed Forces of Nigeria Radio Service, which is behind the scene. The selected beneficiaries are Lieutenant S.O. Oladimeji and Ms. Telma Okonkwo. To make this presentation, I will invite the Director of Defense Information, Brigadier General T.I. Usau, PhD, to make the May I use this opportunity to invite Ms. Telma Okonkwo for a souvenir. To make that presentation, I will equally request the Director of Defense Information to make that presentation. Thank you, sir. May I also invite the Director General, Voice of Nigeria, to receive this award. To make that presentation, I will most respectfully invite the rep of the Chief of Air Staff to make that token presentation. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. The next presentation of souvenir is to 3 independent producers who have distinguished themselves in the course of running their respective programs in the Armed Forces of Nigeria Radio Service in terms of content development, advocacy, and persistence since inception of the station. The first presentation goes to Imam Nura Khalid, known as the Digital Imam. To make the presentation, may I respectfully invite the representative of the Director General, NBC. The next presentation goes to Apostle T.A. Jeremiah. The third presentation goes to Mr. Sonny Anderson Oseidi. You can remain to greet me. You may please retire to your seat. Thank you, sir. We are gradually rounding off the 10th anniversary of the Armed Forces of Nigeria Radio Service. But before we draw the curtains, may I most respectfully invite the Director of Defense Information, Brigadier General T.I. Gusau, PhD, to give the vote of thanks on behalf of the Defense Headquarters, the DDS.
The special guest of honor, the Honorable Minister of Defense, His Excellency Alhaji Muhammad Badr Abakar Suyan, MNI, ably represented by the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Defense, Ambassador Gabriel Aduda, our host, the Chief of Defense Staff, Armed Forces of Nigeria, General C.G. Musa OFR, representatives of the service chiefs, representatives of the Chief of Defense Intelligence, Principal Staff Officers of Defense and Services Headquarters, Directors, Defense and Services Headquarters, Commanders of Defense and Services Headquarters, Director Generals of Federal Agencies, ably represented, senior officers, serving and retired, former Directors of Defense Information, our guest lecturer, the Executive Director, Armed Forces Radio, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, OFR, the Executive Director, Officers, Personnel, and Staff of the Armed Forces of Nigeria Radio Service, I extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Honorable Minister of Defense, His Excellency Alhaji Muhammad Badr Abubakar, the Chief of Defense Staff, Service Chiefs, and all other guests invited here, and indeed all the distinguished invited guests from Defense and Services Headquarters, federal government agencies, the academia, and the media for honoring our invitation to attend this event. My debt of gratitude also goes to the guest lecturer, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, for the thought-provoking and insightful lecture. I also thank the moderator and panel of discussants for the perspective and dimensions they brought to bear on the presentation. It is no longer in doubt that radio is indeed a force multiplier and enabler in our effort to galvanize society and mobilize SEM to defeat the terrorist, banditry, and other security challenges. This is, of course, in line with the Chief of Defense Staff leadership philosophy of leading the armed forces of Nigeria that is people-centric while discharging its constitutional responsibilities. My special thanks goes to our regulator, the Nigerian National Broadcasting Commission, our senior partners, the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria and Voice of Nigeria, independent producers, and our esteemed customers who have turned in the last 10 years to listen to our programs. We urge you to keep listening to our station as we commence our journey into the second decade of broadcasting excellence. I will not end this vote of thanks without thanking the Chief of Defense Staff for approving this event and for all his support to the Armed Forces radio station here in Abuja and Udoka Radio in Enugu. We appreciate you, sir. A special thank also is due to members of the Armed Forces Radio Service, members, both serving and also those that have left. Your sacrifices, passion, and dedication to duty have made this station what it is today. Thank you, and God bless our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for the vote of thanks. The special guest of honor, sir. The next event in the order of the program is group photograph. And immediately after the group photograph is lunch. But permit me to announce that because of want of time, and also to enable dignitaries to attend to other official engagements, the lunch has been carefully packaged, which will be distributed accordingly. Without much ado, because of the weather condition, we are supposed to proceed to the photo stand. We will have the group photograph at the stage. Having said that, may I most respectfully request the chief, the special guest of honor, and the CDS, and all other dignitaries in the front row to proceed for the first group photograph. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. At the stage, sir. Next to join them is all Major Generals and Brigadier General and their equivalents. May I also request the Executive Director, Principal Staff Officers, and invited guests to join.